right, good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Wells in the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. It's 6:30. We'll maybe give folks another couple minutes. We have begun the recording for the meeting. Okay, hello again, everybody. My name is Chris Wells from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. It is 6:32. In the interest of time, I'll go ahead and begin the meeting. This is a joint meeting between the Fairfax County Department of Transportation and the Virginia Department of Transportation. Before I begin, I will read the required script to tell us what to do in a virtual meeting, and I'll try to pretend like I'm actually not reading a script. Again, my name is Chris Wells. We want to welcome you to this meeting tonight. Before we begin, we'd like to review some guidelines so that everyone can participate and get the most out of this session. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. We will link and share from the webpage on the Fairfax County website and online via social media, such as Twitter and Facebook. You are welcome to submit questions using the Q&A function in the WebEx window at any time, and we will do our best to get all questions while also ensuring that we get to all participants. If we run out of time, our team will follow up on any unanswered questions with replies directly to attendees or by posting Q&A on the webpage. Please do not use the chat feature to submit your questions, as the Q&A function will send your questions to all the administrators in this session and will keep questions organized and in one place. If you are on the phone, please hold your questions to the end. We will have instructions on how to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. We also encourage you to submit your comments to today's meeting using the online contacts that will be provided at the end of the meeting, again, or with written feedback or a phone call to our offices. And we'll have all that information at the end of the meeting. So with that, I will introduce Supervisor Dalia Palchik, the Providence District Supervisor for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, and ask you to give us some opening remarks.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Thank you so much. Hope you can all hear me. This is one of my favorite things of the year, is seeing what we're able to repave, restripe, and hopefully find some good bike lanes in there for our community. So excited to see you all here, whether you're here with us tonight or later. There you will have opportunities to share your feedback. You know your community better than anyone else, and so really make sure you provide feedback tonight or through the opportunities that are given through FCDOT and Vdot. So thank you for being with us, Chris Wells and Steve Welch from FCDOT and Vdot, and also Patricia from my team and the teams that are supporting Chris and Steve. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Palchik. So again, briefly, just let me give a quick introduction about why we're here. We break this presentation into two parts. So Steve Welch of Vdot will go first, and then I will follow up with the Fairfax County part. But the basic history and premise here is we've been collaborating with the Virginia Department of Transportation for over 10 years now in the summer repaving process. And Vdot is, everyone may not be aware, but Vdot is the owner and maintainer of all of the county roads. And of course, every summer is the paving season when the temperatures allow asphalt work to be done. So as part of that process, Vdot works with us to let us add the value of helping to examine the streets for improvements to the striping. The basic premise being that it's a blank canvas. So the asphalt's going to be put down, the old striping's gone. Are there any opportunities to improve the neighborhoods, improve the roadways with the striping? This originally began 10 years ago, more focused on bike lanes and starting to build out a bike network in this county. But we've really evolved our collaboration to look broader at neighborhood issues that are more concerns of a broader population than the bicyclists. So we look at the benefits of bike lanes and other striping techniques to help with speed reduction or excessive speed reduction. When you narrow the striping on the roadway, the perception to the driver is it's no longer a big wide open road that they can do whatever they want on. And so we know that that's a proven countermeasure to help with excessive speeding in the neighborhoods. And then also pedestrian safety. We work with Vdot on what existing crosswalks may be on roads that are paved and what new crosswalks we might possibly be able to add. So that's the basic collaboration we have here. Again, it's been very, very effective. Years ago, bike lanes were new, but they're not new anymore. I'm sure everyone in this audience has seen bike lanes throughout the county. So we really do see this as a benefit for not only cyclists, but for the community to improve the driving habits that you all encounter. So with that, I'll pass it over, give us a minute to switch screens and presenters, and Steve Welch will do his presentation. Then I will do my presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Welch from the Virginia Department of Transportation, as Chris mentioned. I'm the Assistant Director for Transportation and Land Use, and I'm first part of the presentation this evening going to go over our paving program, talk a little bit about what will happen this year, but answer a lot of questions and give you a little information about how the paving program works as a whole. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think I have. 1 second. All right. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Good. All right. All right, for the agenda for this evening, like I mentioned, I'm going to go over the Virginia District's paving program, our paving budget for this year, and a little bit of history on that, the planning and construction for paving, how are our roads selected, how are pavement condition ratings determined. Those are usually two of the big questions that everybody has for us. The types of paving treatments are what we call our pavement dashboard, and then kind of transition into the pavement marking and striping program. So just to begin, a little background, we have over 14,000 lane miles in Northern Virginia. Over 7,000 of those, or over half, are in Fairfax County, where our other counties that are part of our district are Loudoun, Prince William, and Arlington. And in Arlington, they maintain most of their roads. We take care of the interstates and some of the primaries. So a little bit of background, this coming year, you can go to the bottom right corner and see right away, this coming year, our budget is for fiscal year 21 is $108 million. And if you look at the couple prior years, we actually went up a little bit, which is better news than we thought we might have after it's been a pretty challenging year, as many of us know. But looking historically back, dating back all the way to 2013, you can see that you're coming out of the recession and the downtimes that we had. We're playing a little catch up, trying to catch up with our paving program. So our paving program, as Chris mentioned, is basically the construction season that everybody sees. However, every year it's a full year cycle. In the winter, we are closing out contracts from the previous year, and in the upcoming year, we're getting ready. So right now, actually in the spring and summer, we start gathering data for the next year. And over the course of the summer, we continue that data gathering and start preparing schedules and coordinating with our central office in Richmond. And during the winter, that's when we get our contracts worked out from last year, as well as signing off on bids and contracts getting executed for this coming season. And we're still doing that. We signed numerous of them, and some of them are still in progress because they're, like I say, go on throughout the course of the entire construction season from typically March to April, depends on the weather. So one of the questions we always have are how are roads selected for paving? And we do that based on pavement condition, traffic volumes, entire neighborhoods versus main streets within the neighborhood. We try to avoid locations where we, of course, know there are existing projects, whether they're ours, the counties, or another jurisdiction locality that might be on the borderline, such as a city or a town. Utility projects also. And we look at economies of scale and our mobilization costs. And what I mean by that is that our contractors have to move their equipment out to the sites and unload them, work the jobs, then move to another site. And we do that, they do that in somewhat of a rotation. So we try to also pick areas that are joining each other to try to help with the economies of scale for those projects to help our budget out. And then also feedback that we get back from our maintenance crews. So the data collection is done by a contract that we have every year with right now with Automatic Road Analyzer. It's as you can see, a very equipped van that has a lot of sensors and cameras and data equipment detection on it. It figures out pavement distress, roughness, texture, rutting. It does digital scanning and measurements and video and imagery, and of course GPS. And that's how they literally drive all the roads for that. And I'll get to that in a moment. So once they collect all that data, they put it together and put it into a rating system that's called Critical Condition Index, or CCI. And really that's a scoring ranking that goes from 100 down to 0. And we work from 60 and above up to 100. So we want to keep everything at the score of 60 or above is our target goal as far as the ratings. And as I mentioned, when we collect the data, we actually do this on all the interstate roads and all the primaries. And in the past, all the secondaries, which account for over half of the lane miles that I talked about earlier, we could only do 20% each year or 100% every 5 years. But beginning this year, we are now going to be collecting the data on every secondary road, high volume secondary, meaning greater than 3,500 vehicles annually. So we'll get much better data than we've been getting in the past, but it works with the cycle. Traffic volumes is another aspect of what we look at. We work with the high volume interstate primary and secondary routes. We have to keep a goal of 82% of the network must have that CCI or that rating of 60 or greater. The low volume primary routes, or less than 3,500, we have a goal of 75% of those. And then the low volume secondary routes are less than 3,500 and 60%. And again, secondary routes are typically those that are neighborhoods, of course, and then interstate and primaries, although there are some high volume secondary routes out there. So looking back at our dashboard over the last roughly 9 years or so, As you can see through time, we've been able to keep the interstate and primary at least that 82% for the interstate and the range of 75% for primary. And we've been catching up, playing catch up for many years. For last year, at the end of the 2020 season, we got up to about 60% of the sufficiency rating that we wanted. So how do we treat? We do have really two major categories. One is preventive maintenance, where we use what's called slurry seal. It's a sealant and then a chip seal that goes on top of that. It's a tiny type of rock that's spread and then swept up, and it helps us to extend the life of pavement for another 4 or 5 years for filling in the gaps of time when we can get to all the roads, which is a constant cycle in itself. Plant mix, we do 2 levels of that depending upon how bad the road is. We mill as much as 2 inches and then overlay it. And with other roads, we have to do a much deeper dig of milling of 2 to 4 inches and then put back those 4 inches. And in some cases, albeit rather few, there are some cases where we'll excavate the entire pavement and reestablish and rebuild the entire pavement altogether in a roadway or a section of a road. So every year we have available online, and this is a screenshot of what's called our Pavement Condition Map. And as I mentioned, on the far right side, we have the condition ratings in color coded. And this is a screenshot from the condition ratings from 2018, blue being excellent, green being good, and you can barely see perhaps all the way down through very poor being red. And so when you look at this online map, which you'll be able to find at virginiaroads.org, the red represents, again, the very poor ones that we're going after, and then the poor, if we can get to those, and then usually the fair and good and excellent are because we've done them over some period of time over the last years. I do want to point out one thing that you see in the condition map and also in the upcoming map is on this case, this is a kind of a close-up of the Reston area. And over at the far left is the town of Herndon, and you won't see anything colored there, and that's because it's within the town limits. And also in some other parts of the maps, you'll see empty, the roads aren't color coded, and that's because they're either private or commercially owned or non-state owned. So this represents all the state owned roadways, state maintained, I should say. We also have a pavement status map that's also online. And this is the one that everybody will be very interested in as it goes online here within the next few weeks. This is last year's, and it's a screenshot, again, of the same area we were just looking at. And when you go online, you'll be able to click onto one of the roads. And in this case, it's showing it clicking to a road down there at the bottom that's blue. Then it up pops the project manager for Vdot and his or her email address and phone number. And if you have any questions, you can always email that project manager about when your road is going to be done, or if there's something going on you want to ask about during the project, you can do that too. So we give our citizens the opportunity to communicate directly that way. So this is an online map, and this is just a screenshot of it, but this is something you'll be able to find this also on virginiaroads.org. So as Chris mentioned, whenever we repave roadways, we're milling up the old pavement for the most part, unless we're doing a slurry seal. And we put back generally the markings that are in kind. That's how we set up our contracts. But we do at Vdot, we do go through and look at some places where we might need to adjust a crosswalk, add an edge line, or in the middle second bullet, we might do some places where we lengthen a turn lane or a taper for a right turn lane or what have you that might be out there to help make the conditions a little safer and just help out with the markings on the road. And then lastly, we coordinate with Fairfax County Department of Transportation and work with Chris and his team to seek opportunities where we can change the markings during the repaving operations, because that's how we get that as economies of scale, where there might be opportunities for what we call a road diet, which is in some cases we have a 4-lane roadway, might end up being that road is not getting heavily as used by vehicles and as it was once built for whatever reason. And we do some analyses and sometimes end up taking 2 of those lanes outside and converting them through with Chris's program into shared lanes, bike lanes, buffered bike lanes. And sometimes we'll use the middle area depending upon what the configuration is. And also coordinate planned pedestrian improvements such as new crosswalks. So lastly, I just wanted to, as I mentioned, just kind of briefly going over the paving program. It's a lot of information to take in, but you can, if you ever have any concerns or inquiries or a complaint even, you can reach us at the 1-800 number there, or more easily available is at my.vdot.virginia.gov. And here are the 2 locations. Again, the Pavement Condition Map and the Paving Map for the upcoming year can be found on virginiaroads.org. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time and stay safe. And I'll turn it back over to Chris. Thank you. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, unmuting.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll pull up my screen to share. Actually, for bandwidth reasons, I'm going to turn my video off and then pull my screen back up to share. WebEx won't let me do that. Okay. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve. The collaboration, the way I explain this to everyone is that this is really a good news Vdot story, because Vdot's been very receptive to helping improve communities with this process. I should also mention one more housekeeping issue. My coworker, Lindsay Marfort, is running the show tonight from behind the screens, and she'll be monitoring the questions and answers at the end and reading those to Steve and I to provide answers. Normally, if we were at the elementary schools, we'd break this in half and take questions now, but due to the online format, we figured it was just easier to take them at the end. Usually, folks have more questions about paving, so I'll just try to move through quickly about why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. So again, as I said, our basic role in this is to look for opportunities for striping modifications, and then go over those with the public, with the Board of Supervisors member, and with Vdot Traffic Engineering to see if these ideas are implementable in the real world. We're trying to do it to improve safety. We're also trying to do it to build out a bicycle network. We have a traffic, we have traffic in Fairfax, and so everything we can do to allow people to take trips other than by single occupancy vehicle is definitely where the county wants to be. We know that for years we focused on bicycle commuters, but there's really a missed opportunity for people to make short trips in their neighborhoods to the stores, places of worship, schools, things like that, if they could get around safely by bike. We, as a county, established a bicycle master plan, and one of the goals of that bicycle master plan was to establish a bicycle network. As part of doing this, we try and make these facilities safe and comfortable. So typically we're talking about today residential streets In the early years of the program, we were picking up some of the 4-lane divideds that not all bicyclists feel comfortable on, but some do. And again, we're trying to build out a network combined with our off-road trail facilities that folks can get around on. The real beauty of this, besides being a good news story with Vdot, is the cost. There's a very insignificant cost associated with this. Vdot deserves credit because they are bearing those costs of additional striping and the additional engineering that goes in to this work. But we're talking, thousands of dollars, maybe $100,000 throughout the county or something in that ballpark. Whereas our capital projects, building trails and sidewalks, cost millions and millions of dollars. And those costs keep going up as things get more complicated these days. So this is really a great use of the public sector's efforts to do things efficiently on behalf of the citizens. So what I mentioned about cyclists is in America for 40 years, since the 70s, 50 years, I guess now, unfortunately, we made the choice to focus on the type A cyclists, the confident cyclists, those that would ride on road no matter what. And that's where we put our bike lanes. And unfortunately, the result was we didn't get that many people to ride bikes. So we know that today there is a huge part of the population, 53% of the population that's interested in cycling, but concerned about their safety. They're looking for something comfortable and safe to be on. Someone like myself, who's sort of a weekend warrior, so to speak, I'll feel comfortable maybe riding on some roads, but again, definitely not high speed, high volume roadways. So what we're trying to do is build a network, build a future in this county where families, folks with children, folks with differing abilities have a comfortable place to bicycle. And so these residential streets where we can provide bike lanes are part of that vision, in addition to building off-road trails. The typical types of striping we use are what's in the middle there, the standard bike lane, which is the 2 white stripes with the bicycle symbol. A better, more comfortable facility is a buffered bike lane, the picture on the right. And that's where we have extra pavement width that we can provide a buffer between the passing vehicles and the bicyclists. Where we don't have as much room and where we have other bicycle lanes leading into and out of an area, we use the marking on the left, which is called the SHARO, a shared lane marking. And that's really to indicate that in this particular area, there's not enough room for a bike lane where someone might have been in a bike lane the block before and getting into a bike lane the block after, but that to indicate to drivers that they should expect cyclists in the roadway. And also we can place that marking in the lane to indicate to the cyclists, is it better for them for safety reasons to be in the middle of the lane, to take the lane, or is the lane wide enough that there's enough room that they can be to the right of the lane? Excuse me. As I mentioned at the beginning, what we've learned and what we know that the non-bicycling population, which is of course most of the population, is concerned about is other issues in their neighborhood. And when we do this infographic is showing some of the benefits to the community that bike lanes provide, and try to show you exactly how that works. The top left one, of course, shows how a bike lane gives comfort for cyclists, but the top middle one shows how a crosswalk, or even not in a crosswalk, if someone's trying to cross the road, the exposure to traffic is reduced because that traffic is in a narrower portion of the roadway. So there's more ability to cross without the greater exposure risk. The top right picture shows that having that bicycle buffer helps you as a pedestrian walking along the sidewalk, because now the car has been shifted over. I forgot to mention a bike lane is typically 5 feet. So the 5 feet of the bike lane or a couple more feet of the buffer, now the car has been shifted over, 7 feet in that example. away from you when you're walking on the sidewalk, which is much more comfortable and safer for you to walk. Again, the lower left goes to the issue of noise level reductions and speeding reductions. I don't want to oversell the speeding reductions. Our data shows that it really doesn't move the classic engineering metric, which is the 85th percentile, more than a mile an hour or so reduced. But what our data does show is it's the excessive speeders that are virtually eliminated. Those speeders that were going 15, 20 miles an hour over the limit. The data shows that pretty much can disappear. So that's an important thing that the narrowing of the roadway does for communities. And then lastly, but as important, if your house fronts one of these roadways, your sight distance to pull out of your driveway is actually improved, because again, the vehicles are now in the center of the roadway, and so that sight distance triangle that us engineers use, it gives you much better visibility of the roadway. So what are we talking about here? Here's a before and after picture of Annandale Road. And of course, on the left, the before picture has a wide roadway that those lanes were, 15 plus feet wide. And that a driver does not have to be as attentive or in as much control when they have that much space to maneuver. So on the right, what you see is the end product, where we've introduced the bike lanes, we've properly striped out the parallel parking, and then provide the area at the intersections to make your right turn, to essentially merge into the bike lane area and the parking area to make a right turn. And that again leads to a much more controlled environment for driver behavior. So tonight, 2021, again, we're building off of years of building out this network. So at some year we'll come here and there won't be any roads left because we will have found all the wide roads. But for tonight, of the roads that are being paved in the Providence district, the ones that we have identified as candidates for striping are Borg Street and Bushman Drive, which are adjacent to each other off of Blake Lane. Pavement Drive and Idle Lane, which are adjacent to each other off of Route 7 and Idlewood, and then Tobin Road off of Woodburn Road. So starting with Tobin Road, we would propose that between Woodburn Road and Beverly Drive, the current existing conditions are 2 travel lanes with on-street parking and a sidewalk on one side. Then there are no bike facilities. So we would move to a proposed condition on Tobin where we'd be able to add bike lanes in both directions, and the on-street parking would remain on the north side. The on-street parking would be removed on the south side of Tobin Road. On Borg Street, from Germantown to the end of the street, it's currently 2 travel lanes wide with no striping. It does have sidewalks on both sides. It does have some on-street parking on both sides and no bicycle facilities. So the striping that would be proposed for Borg Street would add the striping for the parking lanes, add the bike lanes, and the center line striping as well. This also has the benefit of improving access to the upcoming 66 parallel trail that's being built as part of the 66 widening project, which will be a trail essentially from Gallows Road, Dunloring Metro, out to Centerville and west. And I should have mentioned this, and I should emphasize this. We almost always are looking to maintain all the on-street parking in areas which are heavily parked. So the previous example, Tobin, we're talking about the single-family residential section that doesn't have a lot of parking demand on street, but certainly on Borg Street and Bushman, these are heavily parked streets, and we know that we would not ever want to remove the parking associated with those. Now, with the engineering that goes with this work and with adding crosswalks, for instance, it is possible that there's some slight modifications to the areas that are parked, areas that are probably illegal to some areas, like around bus stops and crosswalks that are technically probably illegal to be parked in today. The striping, though, will identify that better so that folks know that that it's boxed out at the end, and you're not supposed to be parking in a bus stop, for instance. Bushman Drive, same neighborhood from Blake Lane to Borg Street. Currently, again, has 2 travel lanes. It has sidewalks on both sides, except at the Blake Lane part. No bicycle facilities. On-street parking in most sections on both sides. The proposal would be to add a bike lane in one direction, the eastbound direction, and in that also the parallel parking striping. And then in the direction where there's not a bike lane, there would be the Sharrow marking. And again, that feeds into the I-66 trail, and again, leaving all the legal area of parking. Pavement Drive, over in this is not exactly Tyson's area, the Pavement area, has actually very high density residential, two high-rise towers and a huge garden apartment complex off of there. So that's a very dense area that can benefit from bicycling facilities to get out to Route 7. It's currently 2 travel lanes wide with sidewalks on both sides and on-street parking. Again, the proposal here would look something like this, that we would stripe in and box in all the parallel parking, legal spaces, and add the bike lanes in areas where it permits, which is most of it. There are some areas where there's a pinch point where we'll probably have to do sharrows. One important thing to note here for the community is that we would need to remove the on-street parking along the Idlewood Plaza frontage. Of course, that's a shopping center with a big parking lot. So we believe that that's not a negative for the parking, and it might even be a positive for the community. But that is something we highlight in this public process. Lastly, a 90-degree intersection with Pavement is Idle Lane, which takes it out to Idlewood Road. So Pavement Drive to Idlewood Road. Again, 2 travel lanes, sidewalks, no bike facilities, on-road parking. Again, the transition would make it bike lanes in both directions, maintain the legal parking on the east side, and remove the parking on the west side. Excuse me. Again, one thing that we've upped our game in this process over the past few years is pedestrian safety. So we, as staff, look at the existing crosswalks and scan the roads that are being paved for any opportunities where we think crosswalks might be needed, such as pedestrian generators, such as schools and activity centers. But one of the important parts of this public meeting tonight is to also get your feedback. So if you see some of the roads that are being paved that you would like to suggest crosswalks at, that's part of the input process we'd like to see. In some locations, priority locations, we can actually try to do things like you're seeing here in this photograph, which is introduce a median refuge. So we're typically at least looking to upgrade the striping to the pattern that you see there. We call that the high visibility block pattern instead of the traditional parallel lines. But then there's other tools in our toolkit also, such as signage and safety improvements. And then again, in priority instances, doing some concrete work that the county can do. And the challenge and the benefit is to match it up with the striping at the time that the road's going to be striped. So with that, this is the slide, and this presentation, by the way, these presentations will be posted on our webpage. But for paving related comments, we ask that you reach out to Vdot through their My Vdot portal, which is my.vdot.virginia.gov, or to call their 1-800-4ROAD number. For striping related comments, reach out to us at the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Once that link is on the webpage, that link takes you to the feedback form. But our web pages are up for this right now. So if you just search Fairfax County's web page for paving and find the 2021 paving, you'll be able to find the ability to contact us through those. So with that, I'll move to the virtual instructions. That again, there's our website there. Take a screenshot or a picture. Again, that's on our website. You can email us at activefairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov or mail it to us at our offices. The address is shown there. But the important thing about this screen is also if you're on the phone on this meeting and you would like to ask a question via the phone, the instructions are there. You press *3, which raises your hand, and then when you're done, you can press *3 to lower your hand. And then for those of you who are online, again, we ask that you type your questions into the Q&A window, and we will go through those. If we have similar questions, we'll probably, of course, just answer those once. But if there's also conversely questions we can't answer, we'll have your email that you logged in with tonight and to respond to you individually by email. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, I think, and then Lindsay will help us with the Q&A questions.
Hello, we have some questions that came in already. The first one I think is probably for Vdot. The question is, some roads like Waples Mill have no shoulder and no sidewalk. Are there any plans to install those for cyclists and pedestrians?
Hi, this is Steve Welch. I'm not aware of any plans to do that at this time. You know, our focus of the repaving effort is just that, is repaving the existing roadways. Typically, if a road doesn't have shoulders and sidewalk, those become more of a project construction type of project that are also coordinated with the county, and the county does have a pedestrian program that we work together on, that they identify linkages to the networks that want to happen with a county comprehensive plan and with the bike ped plan, that is. And funding for those projects is very competitive, and Chris will probably can add to this and better than I can, but certainly also the needs are greater than the funds that are available. And so we try to make the most out of everything that we can do to, do the types of improvements that will help. And so a lot of these that we're talking about tonight are the existing facilities that we are repaving and converting, but I understand your question. And Chris, did you have something to add there?
Sure, I just wanted to add for the sidewalk part. The straight up answer is no. There are no plans to add sidewalks. We have a very challenging county to work in, and of course, this is not the answer that people want to hear. But you know, a road like Waples Mill is what we call a colonial road. It predates engineering. We have an old county with a variety of land uses, and unfortunately, in the modern parts of the county, when we have development activity, we have sidewalks and we have trails. What we do as a county is we have funded $536 million worth of pedestrian, bicycle, and bus stop projects over 20 plus fiscal years. But unfortunately, as Steve said, the needs still far outweigh our ability to be responsive to sidewalk and trail requests. So we maintain a list of unfunded requests such as that, and then at such time as future funding becomes available, we review all the requests with the Board of Supervisors and prioritize the limited funding that we have available. We're still even though we've been doing this for 20 years, as I said, we're still unable to complete facilities on arterials, major arterials. We've been able to do some neighborhood projects, but colonial roads such as Waples Mill, honestly, are very challenging due to their topography. But again, the straight answer is no. The repaving process, unfortunately, doesn't come with a parallel process to do sidewalks at the same time.
Okay, our next one is definitely for Steve. It says, Steve mentioned that Vdot tries to avoid projects that border on another district. Can he give more details on that? The reason I ask is that we live on Arthur Drive and West Drive next to the City of Falls Church, and I noticed the roads are pretty bad.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I said border another district, as I meant to say, if I didn't, jurisdiction. And what I mean by that is the City of Falls Church, the town of Herndon, City of Fairfax. What we do is we coordinate, so those towns and cities that are incorporated manage their own roads within their borders. But on the roads that carry over from travel through that are in the county, then they go right through and through the city or into the city or town. We do coordinate with the city or town, or attempt to, and try to work out if we're going to repave a road. We don't try to stop at the line, if you will, of the border of the city or town. We try to work it together so that we're doing it at the same time, so it's consistent. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, the next one is, would Vdot consider striping a stop bar and crosswalk at the Bushman and Blake intersection, an east-west crosswalk for pedestrians on Blake who need to cross Bushman?
Chris, if you don't mind taking this one, because you've been coordinating that with our traffic engineering staff, you're a lot more familiar with it, if you don't mind. Yeah,
Sure.
Background with it. Do you have the background on this particular one? Okay.
They did. The question does specify that we're not talking about the north-south crosswalks across Blake. This is the east-west across Bushman.
Yeah, and actually, Lindsay, you have worked closer with traffic engineering on this. Did we consider that question in our previous work, or is that something we can ask at this point?
That one has not come up in our conversations yet, but yes, we can take a look at that one. Each crosswalk is subject to an engineering study that we need to conduct first, but absolutely that can go on the list of
Yeah, what I would add, sure, thank you, Lindsay. What I would add is, we have looked at Blake and we continue to look at Blake, and on Blake, what we're looking at is improvements to the crosswalks on Blake, and at Bushman, of course, there's not a crosswalk. So we are actually looking to see if we can work on a project to add a crosswalk across Blake at Bushman. And if we are able to get a funded project there, then that would allow us to also look at the side street. But we can take a look at the side street crossing as well as part of this process. But like Lindsay indicated, we do have to meet engineering standards to do that. But thank you. That's a good suggestion.
This next one, I don't know if Chris or Steve would know more about this. What will the nature of the access to the I-66 parallel trail be on Bushman near the tennis courts? Would a person riding a bike need to be on the sidewalk access, or will there be a ramp or access point from the street?
Chris probably knows more than Steve, but that Chris doesn't know enough. I don't honestly know if if they're going to bring that trail out and make a curb ramp connection to the street, or if it's just tying into the sidewalk. That project is being done by the the firms that are working on the 66 trail. And while we have negotiated and worked with them for a couple of years on a lot of issues, that specific one, how it ties into the local network, is not one. We ensured that there was a connection, that every half mile or so along I-66, that there was the ability to get through the sound walls into the neighborhoods. But I do not know the answer, and we can use your email to try and get an answer to you on that.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to add that as well. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that particular one, but our I-66 team and others that we can talk to and get some research after this meeting to follow up and answer these questions that we can't answer. Thank you.
We have a couple of similar questions about Tobin. One asks, can we clarify where the south side of Tobin Road parking begins? And another is a concern that the removal of street parking on Tobin will increase parking on Beverly. The question says the concern says we have a problem of many service and commercial vehicles from outside the community that are parking on Beverly already.
Yeah, sorry, I was pulling up a map to see exactly where Beverly is. So those are two separate issues. So the going back to the map, and Lindsay, you can confirm my knowledge. The parking along the south that we're proposing to remove is along the single family houses. And I believe it doesn't go all the way out to Woodburn. I believe it's the area where it's really just a grass shoulder right now. So there's not room to park on the road. But when a bike lane is there, then there's a legal reason that you're not supposed to park there. The issue of commercial vehicles parking, though, that's a separate issue in the county. And Patricia of Supervisor Palichik's office might know the nuances of how that works. We do have some limited ability to regulate parking in regard to that, but it's not something that I'm expert to speak on.
Hello, this is Patricia. I'm not sure if the question was about trucks parking. Was that what it was? Trucks are not permitted to park in residentially zoned areas. We do have some cases where a street can be commercially zoned on one side and residentially zoned on the other. If you have any questions, you can place a call to the non-emergency number for the police department, which is 703-691-2131, or send an email to provdis@fairfaxcounty.gov and we will get the answer for you.
All right, thank you. Looking at what else we have. The next one is a crosswalk question, but about the existing condition. It says the crosswalk crossing Monument Drive at the intersection with West Ox Road has a median block, but no break for ADA or bike access.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve. Sorry, Chris. I guess I do recall that there are a couple locations where we have identified that, and I think, Chris, you may know about this as well. I think we are looking at putting in the ADA access through the median in that location and possibly some others. Chris, do you know more specifics about this location?
I know very well because it's a block from my office.
There you go.
When I used to go to an office.
Right.
That is, So what you'll find in the county, unfortunately, is that crosswalks are supposed to be ADA accessible, and if we add a new crosswalk, we have to make them ADA accessible. But unfortunately, as the county was built, it wasn't done perfectly. I don't have a project to fix that, although we were certainly, again, aware of it, and we once looked at it. Steve, I am not aware of a Vdot effort to do that, but it is possible.
Yeah, I have, Chris, I've seen this location myself, as it's near the shopping center, I believe, right, not too far away from our office as well. And I have brought that to the attention of our traffic engineering group to look at, to see if we could somehow find a way with our funds to make that correction. So we'll make another note of it to follow up with our traffic engineering group.
Yeah, thank you. It would not be a complicated fix. We
No.
just need to
No,
cut through that median.
4 foot of concrete median, that's correct. And then, yeah,
that's right.
Thank you for the question. That's a good question, good comment, and that's what kind of feedback we want to get wherever we can try to help out like that. Thanks.
Okay, we have a whole series of questions for you.
Yeah.
About Woodburn Road.
Yeah, I can read.
I'm sure you can guess what some of them are.
Yeah.
So there's several comments that a crosswalk is needed across Woodburn to Pine Ridge Park. There's also a note that the Vdot Pavement Condition Map shows Woodburn as being in fair condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can.
The comment says it is clearly not in fair condition, according to this comment. And a couple of questions about when Woodburn itself might be repaved.
Yeah, I can take that. Thank you, Lindsay. So the first question, and thank you for your questions. My question is, when will Woodburn Road be repaved? I can tell you that it is on the preliminary plan. We're very aware that that road is in very poor condition, actually, which speaks to the second item on your comment there, that the pavement condition map. You're correct. The pavement condition map actually that I showed was 2018. I don't think it's been updated, unfortunately, or not yet, to show the last 2 years worth of condition ratings, but we are aware that that's actually very poor. So it was one of the targeted roads for us to repave that, and it is on the preliminary plan. Things are still considered preliminary until the pavement map goes online, which typically will happen around the first week of April. The next question, number 3.
Steve, sorry, Supervisor Palchik here, if I may. My understanding is, because you know, live very close to this, that it is on the preliminary map for the Mason district, since it's on the border. Is that correct? And if so, do you happen to have the date for that Mason district meeting?
Yeah, Supervisor Palchik, I do recall that I can just speak to Woodburn Road, and maybe you know, it's a long road. There are sections of it, so I'll have to go back and look and see what segment of it is actually planned for on the preliminary plan. So I can follow up with you about that, though.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful, because I can attest that it is definitely not in great shape, and should be prioritized if it hasn't been. And my understanding is it's listed under the review for the Mason district meeting. So if someone has that and can share that with the group, I don't have that date, that would be helpful.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up and trying to unmute. The Mason district meeting is March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. So again, if you go to our county webpage and get to the 2021 paving, you can find the Mason district contact information, but we do not have the full paving maps of all of the roads that are being paved. But Supervisor Palchik, my recollection is the same. that you asked that question previously, and we did think that Woodburn was being paved, but we'll need to get back to everybody on that. On the crosswalk question, Steve, I'll just go ahead and jump in on that.
Okay.
Adding a crosswalk to a traffic signal is unfortunately more complicated than it sounds. It needs to be a real engineered project, and the challenge on the park side is that there's an embankment and no infrastructure. So, as I said earlier, crosswalks need to be ADA routes, and so we would need to build something on the receiving side of that crosswalk in the park that would be an ADA route. So it's not something that can be done as part of paving. It needs to be something that would be engineered. It is something that we have actually previously been asked to do as part of this process. So we have it on our radar as something to ask for, but just a simple adding a crosswalk to a regular intersection is at least $100,000. And my gut is that getting something into the park that would be an ADA acceptable connection really complicates that into being higher than that. So the answer is, unfortunately, again, the straight answer is no. It will certainly not happen this summer as part of the paving, but it is definitely a great idea, a great suggestion. We know that park, not only the gardens, but the ball fields and everything are a huge community attraction. Lindsay, were we looking at any other crosswalk away from the signal that could be done as part of paving, like towards Fairfax Hospital, that you remember? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I don't believe we have any on the list right now, but there are crosswalks at Tobin and Beverly. Is that the direction you're thinking of?
Other direction, to the east.
Other direction. Sorry. No, I don't think we have anything on the list in that direction. There's not a pedestrian facility.
Yeah.
Much of that stretch. And where there is a pedestrian facility, there already is one marked crosswalk over by, I guess, Luttrell Road.
So we certainly have that on our request list at this point, but unfortunately, that's not something that we can deliver on right now.
As a follow-up to that, we also had a comment that I think this was already addressed, right? That it's just too dangerous for pedestrians to cross, I guess, anywhere in that whole intersection of Woodburn and Tobin because of the blind curve. But I think that's sort of wrapped up in previous answers.
So Lindsay, if I may, I wanted to let Chris share, and as you know, I walk this and jog it and bike it, and I agree that it is dangerous, and so do appreciate, I know it can't be included in this project, but if your team and Vdot can get some information back to, my office of where it can be included. I know we're looking at future plans and what the cost would be and what we would need to do to study that. That would be very helpful.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Switching locations again, we have a couple of questions about, I believe it's Bushman. Parked cars, people park cars in front of the Fairfax Connector bus stops. Signage might help. There's another question asking for, oh, here it is. There are several bus stops along Bushman that have bus stop signs, but they do not have no parking signs. People park close to these stops, which would result to buses sticking into the bike lane. Can you please put signs up?
Sure, I'll take that one. So when we do these striping plans, Vdot has an engineering firm that actually engineers them correctly. And again, as if you recall from the pictures I showed, we do a 90-degree area for showing where parking is supposed to end. The code in Fairfax for parking at a bus stop is 50 feet. But it doesn't necessarily, the last time I looked, say 50 feet in front, 50 feet behind, 25 feet on each side. So that's something that most citizens wouldn't understand. And so the striping will help with that. As far as signage is concerned, we try not to use no parking signs if it's not needed. And the way we handle that is sort of on a case-by-case basis, following up with the striping. We hope that the striping helps people understand bus stops, crosswalks, access to the 66 trail. But if no parking signs are necessary, that's something we can, both Vdot and ourselves can do. Signs cost money, and signs also are not always welcome because we tend to oversign things in America. So the approach that we take with the repaving is to do the striping first, see if there's an issue, ask the police to do enforcement second, see if that solves the problem. And then if it does not, then if we have a persistent problem, then we would come back and look at adding the signs.
Another Bushman question. But I guess generally for all other bike lanes as well. The question says, Bushman bike lane designs, as well as all others, with on-street parking retained and without buffering or protection, place the person riding a bike in the door zone. Why not remove parking and buffer or protect them?
Sure, that's a great question because that's a common problem. Yeah, that is the law does say that a driver is supposed to look before opening their door, in particular, obviously with a bike lane. But what we're limited to here is the space that we have available to us. So again, as I said, the beauty of this process is that it's very low cost. So we are not widening the road. So we're looking at what we can fit within the existing road. And so the outcome is not exactly how we would engineer it if we were building a brand new road. So if we were building a brand new road, we would typically either put a buffer between the parking and the bike lane, or we would make the bike lane slightly wider to give that space. We don't have the opportunity to do that on Bushman. As far as removing the parking is concerned, unfortunately, parking is such a premium and such an emotional issue in most communities. In particular, in high density areas, in single family areas, it's a little bit different because most folks can park in their driveways on their property and only have overflow parking issues, like when they have a party or things like that. But in multifamily areas, we know that the parking requirements of the county do not match the occupancy of life in the year 2021. And so parking is actually something that we would not mess with for bike lanes. We know that has in the past caused great community consternation, and so we would only do that in a combination of two things. If there really wasn't a demand for the parking, which unfortunately on Bushman there is, and if it was really necessary to make something fit. So it does result in the concern that is raised, and it's a valid concern, that the bike lane is tucked up against the parking lane.
Stay there, Chris. I think this one's for you too. We're actually almost caught up on questions now. I think the next questions are follow-ups to what you just said. One asks, what about no parking signs in the vicinity of trail access points on Bushman Drive? And then there's another comment that there is tons of empty off-street parking along Bushman. So why is on-street parking being retained? But I think you just addressed all of that.
I can expand on that. So for crosswalks, we are very interested in making sure that cars aren't parked there. Crosswalks need to have visibility for pedestrian safety. So if we have a problem with parked cars encroaching upon the crosswalks, we will add no parking signs. Vdot does that as part of their regular business, where again, if it's needed, if it's a problem, we definitely don't want there to be sight distance problems, because crosswalks serve two purposes. Of course, they indicate to the drivers to expect pedestrians, but they indicate to pedestrians this is where the engineers want you to cross. So the most important thing about a crosswalk is that there's adequate sight distance. So if the parked cars are a problem, and I think we're studying a possibility for a crosswalk where the I-66 trail comes out, and we'll have to see if we meet the engineering requirements for that crosswalk. But we absolutely want sight distance for those crosswalks, and if we need to put no parking signs, we will. What we look at in any of these neighborhoods is what is the existing parking. So yes, there certainly are large parking lots, but we also see that there's cars parked there all through the roadway. So the simple answer is, if we looked at a road and didn't ever see evidence of parking, it is our job in the Department of Transportation to look out for bicycling interests and pedestrian safety interests and traffic. So we would consider taking parking. But when we see evidence of heavily parked vehicles throughout, almost the entirety of the roadway, we know that that somebody is parking there. Somebody needs to park there. We also know parking is an emotional issue, and there's two sides to this. There's the people that don't have a guest parking space, or don't have, they own 5 vehicles and they're only given two parking spaces. And Americans certainly have the right to own cars. The other side of that is the people that don't like all the parked cars, or the previous comment about commercial vehicles, taxis, things like that. And that's a difficult situation, because the guy that drives that taxi might live there, and that's his job, and that's his taxi. So we know that parking is can evoke very strong emotions in the community, but there's typically two sides to that story. And so we do err on the side of leaving parking in place when there's evidence of significant amounts of parking, even if there are significant parking lots.
All right, our next question is about Prosperity. The comment says Prosperity really needs bike safety improvements. Someone is going to get killed there trying to get to Egan Park and the County Connector Trail. We need bike ped access to the CCT.
Sure, I'll take that. That's a difficult question to answer. Again, a road like Prosperity is a very narrow roadway with ditch sections that drop off sharply, so there's no shoulder. So it's really not currently a facility that most people would feel safe bicycling on. Unfortunately, also because of those characteristics, it's not an area that we could easily fix. Given millions of dollars, we could rebuild the length of Prosperity with shoulders and not impact people's properties too much, enclosing all those ditches into underground drainage. But that's probably $50 to $100 million that we don't have. So what I've advised citizens in the past, Prosperity, again, our county is a 275-year-old county, and a road like Prosperity is one of those original, or not, maybe not quite colonial, but at least 100 years old original roadways that provides that north-south connection that is critical, and it obviously ultimately leads to the Dunloring Metro Station and further on to Tyson's. What I've advised folks previously in that area is to not bicycle on Prosperity and to bicycle through Mantua on Barkley and roads that just don't have the higher volume and higher speed vehicles. And that, unfortunately, is the best advice I can give at this point. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but the ability for us to, for instance, to build a trail parallel to Prosperity for pedestrians and cyclists, again, would be a huge multi-million-dollar effort, and then that would be very impactful to the property owners along there. So that's unfortunately a very difficult situation to answer, but that's my honest answer.
I can add a little bit to that. This kind of goes back also on an earlier question this evening. So when, as Chris mentioned, and I said earlier also, on projects like that, there are roadways like that are narrow, that are old, that don't have shoulders right now. In many cases, they just drop right off with ditches running along the sides to drain the roadway. Over time, there's also been a lot of utilities put in that parallel the roadway. All the parking, driveway access points, have mailboxes, driveway entrances, landscaping. The right-of-way is very tight. And so when Chris was talking about millions of dollars, that's very true. Many of the projects for us to be able to do something like that would cost a lot of money, and it's hard it varies depending upon the typical section, what type of improvement we're making. But again, we're trying to maximize the use of existing roadways that we have for this program, and making as much repurposing, if you will, where we can, and making biking and pedestrian safety better.
Lindsay, can I add one quick thing? And I will let people know that, really appreciate this partnership between FCDOT and Vdot, helping make our community shift to also be safe for biking and walking. This is Prosperity in Woodburn. I've lived on and off of for about 30 years, so I completely understand the frustrations there. Another partnership we have, as you all know, is with the Parks and the Cross County Trail, and it was brought up here, which are run by our park authority. As you've seen, they've been repaving it and will continue to do so. And there may be additional opportunities. About 6 years ago, I think I was in a meeting with the Aiken Park community and the Mantua, my elementary school, cafeteria about projects that some have been implemented and some that may come in the future. So I know some options for other connections to the Cross County Trail were brought up there. But feel free to email my office. I'll put the email providence@fairfaxcounty.gov, and we will also share those. I'm meeting regularly with our profitability reps.
Yeah, and thank you, Supervisor Polchik. I mean, I gave my example of using Barkley instead, but you can also use our bicycle map. We have a bicycle map, a paper version, but also an online version that shows the neighborhood connectivity, the bicycle comfortable routes, the neighborhood streets. So there are abilities to access the Cross County Trail from some of the neighborhoods there. There's not a lot, but there are some. So I would encourage folks to use that bicycle map to find that safer, more comfortable route a bicycle fortunately can go a little bit out of their way versus someone who's walking. And to be able to access the Cross County Trail in that area, which is an excellent facility when you get to it.
We have a request for Woodburn at the community gardens. The request is for a light, not a signal, but an actual light to illuminate the road to make crossing slightly safer. That might
So
be
this is Steve and Steve Walsh from Vdot. So Vdot itself doesn't typically install roadway lighting. That is usually done through a program with the electric companies that's coordinated with Vdot and the county to identify locations like that. We do provide lighting on interstates, heavily high volume travel interstates around interchanges on limited access facilities. But on other locations, we typically do not do that. I don't know, Chris, whether you had anything to add, or what's the location again, by the way?
At Pine Ridge Park that we were discussing before at Woodburn and Tobin.
Okay.
Another question is, when can we expect the paving on Bushman Drive to take place? So I think that's a question for Vdot.
Yeah, so our season, as I mentioned, typically is March through November, but we've had a pretty rough winter. We're wrapping up most of our contracts now. There might be some projects that are getting started or will be here soon, but for the most part, it looks like it's going to be early April before we start to see a lot of projects starting. But when the map will hopefully be up and running by around the first week of April to see that roadway, click on it and see. You can always contact the project manager for Vdot that's handling the paving aspect of it and managing the project as a whole to see if they have a date of when that one is going to be actually executed. One of the things I talked about in my presentation was economies of scale. And what we do is we release bids. In many cases, a contractor will bid on, we allow them to bid on multiple projects. And in some cases, we wrap 2 or 3 or 4 of those projects together in one package, if you will. And so we get that economies of scale. But at the same time, we also allow them some flexibility because of the weather, because of needing to move equipment. And what I mean by that is they get to set their times when they can do them based on when they're finishing other projects and based on the weather and other logistics that they need to do. So basically the contracts are set up that they have to complete them within a part of the season. And that's a pretty significant part. It's usually a large window. So We don't always know, other than know it'll happen during the season, but the project manager will usually have some heads up once he's starting to coordinate more with the actual contractor.
Thanks, Steve. I don't see any new questions. Oh wait, here's one. I'm scrolling up and down this Q&A here. Can any of the plans be petitioned by the community? And if so, where can we do that?
So this is not like the traffic calming process that has an official ballot process or anything like that. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to get community input. And so if you are opposed to anything that you've seen tonight, you're welcome to express that opinion. We know that you know, there's only a few of you here in this meeting tonight. So we weigh both comments in support and in opposition, with the knowledge that, you know, we're not reaching 100% of the people who could benefit from it, nor 100% of the people who are affected by it. So what we're really looking for is to find a way to make things work. And so if there's an engineering issue that we can improve on, if there's a particular thing that we've missed, you know, we're county staff or Vdot staff, we don't live in your neighborhoods. So we certainly want, you know, you to tell us about something that we may have missed or something that needs to be improved on. But no, this is not a vote. We're not taking a vote here tonight on, you know, what everybody thinks. We want this input. Supervisor Palchik, no doubt, values everybody's input. Staff values the input. But no, this is not. So if you're familiar with our RTAP process, our Residential Traffic Administration Program, where there's a very well-defined process of a certain percentage of people have to participate, a certain percentage of people have to vote. We just don't have the luxury of that type of process because this paving is so dynamic. We literally learned in the fall of last year that these roads might be paved. We have to work very quickly to identify opportunities to do these striping changes. And these roads are about to be paved. I don't know if we mentioned it, but the paving begins in April and runs through November. So we have this opportunity, and we didn't always do this 10 years ago, but we do this meeting now and reach out to the communities for input. But we're somewhat hamstrung by the fact that it's a very dynamic process, and there's a lot of moving parts, and we know that we're not hearing, you know, all the voices of the people who might want it or might be opposed to it. But again, that's the purpose of this meeting. And so absolutely, if you're opposed to something and you don't like it, feel free to tell your friends and neighbors, your HOA, and use the comment opportunities, the ways to give us feedback. And, you know, certainly there has, we had a case a couple of years ago in Reston on South Lakes, where 200 people came to our meeting instead of the 20 or so that we have here now, and all 200 of those people came to tell us that we were doing it wrong, and we listened, and we hadn't anticipated the impacts to South Lakes High School and the kiss and ride queue, you know, for a high school and the football games and things like that. So we absolutely changed our plans based on that type of feedback. So that is the purpose of this meeting. So please do, you know, even if you're in opposition, give us that feedback, and, you know, hopefully in a way that helps us improve upon it. But if you just outright don't like it, that's your right, and that's the purpose of this meeting.
We are at 8 o'clock. Do we want to continue?
Lindsay, if you don't mind, I am going to have to hop off for another meeting, but I want to thank you. I want to thank Chris and Steve and Tanya and Patricia here and all of you who joined us. I know there are some comments here, a little bit different doing it online than in person. And please continue to communicate. I think you will share, Chris and Lindsay, where people can communicate. You had it in the last slide, also sent out. Feel free to share with my office as well, Providence at fairfaxcounty.gov. Three of these sites at minimum are near, probably 4 are near parks. So I'm happy to get your feedback, especially as it relates to, you know, beyond this repavement program issues that you've addressed for walkability, bikeability, and sharing the roads and other issues related to accessing our parks, our gardens safely. I know I share many of your concerns there, and as funding is limited, we do continue to work with Chris's team and with our state and other local partners to do our best to make sure that these projects can get funded and built as quickly as we are able. But just want to thank everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join you tonight, FCDOT and Vdot, and appreciate all of your input.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Podsick. We appreciate your leadership in the community. So as Lindsay said, it's 8 o'clock. That's our scheduled time. We've answered, we believe, all the questions on the Q&A. We thank everybody for your participation. We should have said that in the beginning also. We know that everybody's busy and everybody's stressed out in the pandemic. So we also know that people are walking and biking more. Because of the change into all of our lifestyles. So we really do appreciate the public's interest in this. It's a population of 1 million+ people in this county. And so for each one of you to have taken your time tonight and be involved in this process, we really do appreciate and respect that. And it speaks highly of your interest in community involvement. So with that, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. Steve, if you'd like to say anything, close us out for the Vdot side, and then we will end the recording and the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I echo what Chris says as well. We really appreciate your feedback and input, and we're trying to do everything we can to take that information and wrap it up and deal with it and try to help coordinate our paving program with the county bike ped program and this repaving process. And like Chris said early on, this has been a great collaboration, and we're working together to try to work with the community, and we appreciate your time coming out and joining this virtual meeting tonight. Thank you.